Hi, this is Miss Linton, and this is seventh period at lunch on a Friday. Say hi.
Hi.
Oh my gosh, say hi.
Hi.
Thank you. Okay, so this is AP Bio, and we are reviewing Chapter 35, the respiratory system. First thing I want you to make sure you review are the steps of respiration. So breathing, all that is ventilation of the lung, inspiration, expiration, right? Breathing in, breathing out. External respiration is the exchange of what? Come. There's a picture on the board. What is external respiration? Exchange at the alveoli in the blood, right? So it's moving oxygen going from the alveoli into the capillaries and vice versa, CO2 out. Circulation is as it moves through the body, and then internal respiration. How is that different from external respiration?
Externals with the environment.
Say that again?
Externals with the
Environment, and then the internal respiration is between your capillaries and your tissue fluid, right? That's where your exchange of gases is, and then cellular respiration in your cells. Then we did a compare and contrast between what it's like to live on land and live on water and your respiratory needs. Who has to expend more of their energy to do respiration? Water. Yeah, why?
There's less oxygen in the water.
There's less oxygen, and it's harder to move water, okay, than it is to move air. Takes more of an effort, okay? And then we talked about the requirements of a respiratory surface. It has to be what? What are all the things it has to be? Thin, moist,
Flat? No.
thin, moist, large,
Some are bi-trans.
and yeah, some need to be near a transport system, okay? So thin, why does it have to be thin? To allow for diffusion, okay? It has to be moist so the gases can dissolve. Has to be large enough to meet the metabolic needs. And then depending on what kind of system you have is where if it needs to be near a transport system or not. Can you use like a gastrovascular cavity? And then this is a really good image where it just shows you a survey of different ways to meet your respiratory needs, whether you're using your skin or your gills. If you look here in the bottom corner, you're using tracheal system, where this would be an example of where they don't use their fluid, in their circulatory system. They don't use their fluid to carry oxygen and CO2. They're using their tracheal tubes to directly drop it off at each cell. Okay, and we're the invaginated, like the raccoon here, are exchanging our alveoli. Now, simplest of all, it doesn't matter. You're always ultimately going to go across a single cell, right? No matter if you're multicellular or unicellular. So that cell membrane is obviously going to be thin and moist. In this case, you don't need a transport system, even though it's multicellular, because you use your large, what? What do you call that cavity? Gastrovascular cavity, yeah. So your outside of the hydra is exposed to the water. The inside is exposed to water as well because of the branching gastrovascular cavity. Same thing here with your planaria. It uses its outermost parts of its body and then its branching gastrovascular cavity. A polychaete's just another worm. Here are some external gills, some internal gills, and then this takes us to the great fish example. Okay, now the fish gills are in an arch. They're folded back on themselves like this, right? And if you went along and looked inside of each of the arches, then you would see these disc-like lamellae. Okay, and what the key thing about the lamellae is that the blood and the water are moving what? What's the word? Countercurrent. Yeah. So as far as oxygen goes, okay, then the richest oxygen is going to be at this end, and then you're going to have less and less and less oxygen in your blood, in the water as it passes across the lamellae. But the blood, as it's moving the other direction, when the blood is coming in, okay, at this point, this blood has passed through almost the entire lamellae, so it's been able to pick pick up oxygen. So right here it's pretty high in oxygen, but it's still less than the freshest water that's coming in. So it always facilitates the transfer of oxygen from the water into the blood. If they were going concurrently, the maximum oxygen uptake you could get is what? 50%. Perfect. Okay, everybody good on that concept? All right, then here you can see an insect, and the spiracles are the opening to their tracheal tubes. And at the very end of their smallest tracheoles, which you can kind of see right here, I'm putting a box around it, there's a little bit of water at the very end to allow for the gases to dissolve and then move into their interstitial fluid, okay, around their cells. We have lungs. You can see our alveoli right there. You could review each of the structures. Just real quickly, what is our voice box called? What? Larynx, good. What do you call the tube that's in charge of carrying the air to our lungs, the largest singular tube? Trachea. And the trachea is lined... The trachea is lined with cilia. Why would that be beneficial to have your trachea lined with cilia? What? Yeah, to get out any particulate matter. When we first bring our air into our bodies, though, we might want to use our nose. What are all the things our nose can do? Filter, moisten, warm. Good. Okay, there's a tube that is used by both our digestive and respiratory system. What is that? Esophagus is for food. Pharynx. It's at the back of your throat. Okay? So air, and you're going to have air come in the nose, right? And you're going to have food come in the mouth, and both of them are going to be in this area of the pharynx. So how do we protect our trachea? Yes, the epiglottis will cover, right here's your epiglottis. The epiglottis will cover the top of the trachea when you are what?
Eating.
Be more specific.
Swallowing.
Swallowing. In the process of swallowing, okay, it will cover it, and that way it'll shift the food down into your esophagus and avoid your trachea. Okay? Your trachea is always open. Your esophagus is muscular, and it'll push the food down. That's different. The trachea, to keep it open, what does it have? C-shaped cartilaginous rings. Okay, you can see it here in the yellow. Okay, right here, these C-shaped cartilaginous rings, and they're only in the front. Why is that? The back of your trachea is protected by your spinal cord and everything. You'd have to get, if you're going to get to the back of the trachea, you've got bigger problems, right? Because you've already gone through your spine. The front of your trachea is right here. It could collapse quite easily. So this keeps it open right here and protected in the front. Take your 4 fingers right here and feel your cartilaginous rings. Right? Okay? So, and that's the front. So then the air, as it passes down through the trachea, it's got a choice. What are these called? What are those? Bronchi. And those branch into the bronchial tree. And those end at what are the smallest tubes of all? Smallest tubes. Bronchioles. Okay. And then that, you're going to ultimately end. Here's your bronchial tree. Okay. You're going to end right here in these lobules that are made up of, just like you were talking about a second ago, alveoli. And here you can see the capillaries that are surrounding the alveolus, and they're dropping off what? And picking up? Good. How did that CO2 show up in this vein right here when it breaks into this capillary? How did it show up as? Bicarbonate. Good. So because CO2 travels as bicarbonate, right? And then that bicarbonate would hook up with a hydrogen ion and form what? Carbonic acid. And then you could use some dehydrogenase to convert it back into CO2 and water, which can then be exhaled, right? That comes later, but I'm saying it happens here. Then the oxygen will move in to the blood. It's going to go from a higher concentration to a lower concentration. And who's it going to hook up with? Who's the oxygen going to hook up with? Hemoglobin. How many molecules of hemoglobin do you have in every red blood cell? 250 million. Yeah. Boom shakalaka. All right. And then each of those hemoglobin molecules can carry how much oxygen? 4. So how much can one red blood cell hold? A billion. Yeah, a billion. All right. We're Birds of Oak Park. 142 number. I think we're, yeah, 142 number. Get a clicker. Try to answer these. Get ready for your test. Let's go. There's more than 12 of you. Come on. Let's go, guys. Go, 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 go. 142 number. Okay, that's it. That's all I'm waiting for. Yay! 1. Uh-oh, bad news. Here it goes. Hey. Yeah, I'm doing a review right now. Recording it. Are you being sarcastic?
No.
Okay. Did you have one of these? Oh, very nice. Okay, did you bring chocolate? Is there any left? Where are the peeps? Are you focused? Are you done? Why do I have so many that are not answered? Oh, great sadness. Where does all exchange take place? Alveoli. Which is surrounded by what? Capillaries. Look at me. Don't be here just because you're like doing your due diligence and I'm showing up. Why are you here right now? Yeah, to review. So use it for that purpose. Challenge yourself, answer the questions. Look, we got, you know, an honors biologist even here. Good job, good job. Yes.
Is there going to be like a subject when we look at a test?
Is there usually?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know because I didn't check it. So I was
It's probably not up there yet. Yeah. Okay, so let's answer that out loud. What's the difference between the larynx and the pharynx?
Larynx is like the voice box.
Larynx is the voice box, and it would be below your pharynx. Okay. All right, we had a little bit of struggle here because they picked pharynx. Sadness. right, that's it, all the time. O. F, trachea. Air and food passageway in the trachea. What would happen if you got food in your trachea right now?
It sounds bad.
Yeah, you would choke. The pharynx is for air and food. That is surprising me. All right. So there's positive pressure breathing and negative pressure. Positive pressure, you're pushing the air in, right? Negative pressure, you're drawing the air in. I'm just curious. Do xylem or phloem remind you of the frog? Phloem pushes, right? Whereas when we think about xylem, we think about what process? Pulling, right? Do you see you see the analogy? Okay, so positive pressure, you're forcing the air in, and negative pressure breathing like us, we're drawing the air in from a higher pressure to a lower pressure in our lungs. Our lungs are 50 times the surface area of our skin, finely divided into alveoli. And in order to do that, we need to have our diaphragm contract, go flat, and our ribs come up and out, which creates larger space in our what? Thoracic cavity. Are you guys just tired? Are you spent? What is going on? Did you Macbeth today?
Yeah. No, we haven't. I have it right now. We have it right now.
All right. No? No Macbeth? Who did Macbeth yesterday? Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, now come back to me. Shh. Ribs up and out, thoracic cavity gets bigger, so air goes from a higher pressure to a lower pressure. When we exhale, that would be like positive pressure. When we exhale to get the air out, diaphragm relaxes, ribs come down, forcing that air out. Okay. What do you call a normal breath? Normal breath. Tidal volume. Tidal volume. Michael Phelps.
12 liters.
What do you, yeah, 12 liters. What do we call that? Your vital capacity. Where that biggest, largest breath that you can get. Do you ever completely get all the air out of your lungs? No, what's left behind? Residual volume. Except for when you get the wind knocked out of you. Good. What's something besides how fish have something unique to them in the countercurrent exchange in their lamellae of their gills? What's something birds do that, just a little twist on this, a little adaptation? What? Unidirectional flow of the blood through the lungs. Is that what you were going to tell me in the air? Okay. All right. So they'll bring the air first into their posterior air sacs, then through their lungs, anterior air sacs, and out. So it only flows in one direction through the lungs. And similar to fish and their gills, the blood and the air are at a countercurrent to increase the efficiency of being able to pick up oxygen. What part of our body tells us when to breathe? Medulla oblongata, good. How does it know how to tell your body what to do, to breathe more if you need to? pH of the blood. What does the pH of the blood indicate? More CO2, and if you have more CO2, you're probably using up all your oxygen. How is it that high CO2 levels lower the pH? How do high CO2 levels lower the pH? Because, fill in the blanks for me, CO2 binds with water. Where is the water? In the blood, right? CO2 binds with water and forms what? Carbonic acid. Keep the food out of your trachea. Carbonic acid, right? And then the carbonic acid will dissociate into what? Hydrogen ions and bicarbonate. So if you have more CO2, you'll have more carbonic acid, which means you'll have more bicarbonate and more hydrogen ions. More hydrogen ions means lower pH. You have chemoreceptors at the arch of the aorta in your carotid artery, who are detecting your pH and telling your medulla oblongata. Your medulla oblongata sends feedback for your breathing rate and your heart rate to increase, thereby increasing the amount of oxygen in your blood. How are you doing on that? What are you looking at? Not those guys. Okay, guys, commit to these. Guys, what are you doing? They're what? Oh, they're not doing this. They're doing English.
You know, that's what the honors kids do.
Yay!
No, it's not. No, it's not. Hey, I remember that one. No, it doesn't. Breathing requirement. That's not true. The oxygen is in the air. You're not going to filter it. It's definitely not B. It's definitely C. No, it's okay. It's definitely it has to be. Yeah.
Oh, yay. But you all didn't answer. Was anybody worried about one of the other ones? One of your choices? Okay.
Johnny was.
Why are you throwing me under the bus? Why are you throwing me under the bus?
Did you really? Do you want me to talk about B?
They explain it to me. Which animals is a circular system not to be involved?
Oh, I remember.
So, you have to break it down.
Well, not. I remember. Not. That's what I missed last time.
You're just taking too long. I can't deal with this. Let's go. Okay, that's it. I'm done. Oh, sadness. What did somebody say? No. Trout has a circulatory system, but something you could tell me about a trout.
The gills go countercurrent.
Yeah, the gills are countercurrent. What else could you tell me about a trout?
You have to work harder to get oxygen.
Okay, what else could you tell me about a trout?
You don't have to worry.
Single pump to the gills and the systemic circuit, right? Single pump.
They're fish. Okay, great.
Okay, we'll just go through them quickly because we have 10 minutes here. Which animal breathes by positive pressure? Frog, good. Which of these statements are correct concerning inspiration? Do the rib cages move up and out? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Diaphragm contracts, moves down?
Yeah.
Yes. Pressure in the lungs decreases?
Yeah.
Yep. Lungs expand because the air comes rushing in, forced by the trachea? No. Air comes rushing in, but not because of the trachea. Okay, I'm going to skip right to here. Okay, in your lungs, right? Bicarbonate. Here comes oxygen, kicks off hydrogen. Hydrogen gets together with bicarbonate and makes what? Carbonic acid. Carbonic acid breaks down into what? CO2 and water, right? CO2 gets exhaled. Right? We got that part down. And then out here, guys, I can't talk over the top. It's too difficult. Okay? As the CO2 levels increase, okay, the CO2 level gets with the water. Water forms what? Water and CO2. Carbonic acid, which breaks down into what? Yes, and this change in pH causes hemoglobin to kick off oxygen, which then goes out into the tissues. Okay, so that's blood gases.
That's important.
So which one?
That is important. This is a good diagram right here that explains that.
Which one starts with CO2 and water? Alveolar or the?
Well, it's wherever you have it. So out of the tissues, you have CO2. And then we talked about, right, saturation curves. What's your answer here? Yes, bicarbonate and dissolved in the plasma. Air enters the human lungs because atmospheric pressure is less than the pressure inside the lungs. Atmospheric pressure is less. If it was less, air would come out. Because atmospheric pressure is greater than the pressure inside the lungs? Yes. They're not the same. And it doesn't have anything to do with the residual air. And then the rest were colds, and you didn't have to know that part. But there are some, what are some questions here? These are just diseases.
So we need to know those.
No, that was just for your benefit. Okay, good job. Have good weekends. I will see you Monday for our 4-day week and then a 4-day weekend. Have a good evening.